You good? Yes. Okay. The meeting of the Plaquemines Parish Council as sole governing authority of the Plaquemines Port Harbor and Terminal District is now called to order. The machine is open for roll call. Let the record reflect that all commissioners are present. We'll rise. Commissioner Newsom will lead us in the prayer, and Commissioner LaFrance will lead us in the pledge.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Please bow your heads. We take this moment to acknowledge Almighty God and thank Him for our bountiful blessings, especially for the parish's natural resources. We give thanks to God for our brave and courageous men and women in our military who daily risk their lives to protect our precious freedom, and we pray for our world leaders to know how to obtain world peace. We pray that this government body, comprised of both council and administration, will always serve our parish with honesty, humility, and equality to all. And as this governing body gathers here today, we pray for the wisdom to know right from wrong and the courage to do which is right. And that we pray in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. I will pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to welcome everyone this afternoon. Good to see you. If you would, as a courtesy, if you have a cell phone, put it on silent. We'd appreciate that. And we will proceed with the agenda.
Agenda item 2, executive session, there are none. Agenda item 3, status report by the executive port director.
Greetings, council, especially on this post-Mardi Gras week. This is my first Mardi Gras living here in New Orleans, and I tell you, it was a great time. This past week, we completed our meeting with the Civil Service Office, and we're still assessing the findings and the next steps. We also, this week, we actually had a trip to Mobile, Alabama, to APM's terminal for a tour with some of the council members, which went really well. All of you should be in acceptance of the 2021 audited financials, which we are posting to our website by close of business today. And I'm happy to state that the financial services agreement that we have with R. Johnson, we actually have Tommy Surpass on the ground in the office, and we've started a deep dive into our financials. And our plan is for starting next month that we will start giving a financial report. And probably the best news is we do have an interview tomorrow for a director of finance, so we're excited about that. And we will update everyone, on how that turns out. Right now, we only have one candidate that's actually qualified for the position, and we will have that interview tomorrow. And that sums up my comments.
Any comments or questions from the board to Director Tillotson?
Yes, who will be,
I'll cue in so we can get your microphone on. Go ahead. Yeah, we'll
Thank you,
get your
Mr. Chairman.
microphone on. Yeah.
who will be doing the interviewing?
So it's going to be Tommy Surpass, Christie, and Melissa Foss.
You will be participating in it?
I will go in for an introduction, and I'm going to allow them to do the interviewing.
Okay, thank you.
And that's actually a very good question, and the timing is really great with us having Tommy on the ground. We know what we're looking for, so we've already identified, those critical items that we have to have in the position. I will be there to greet the individual, but I will allow them to do the interview.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Edwards?
Yes, I want to know, you mentioned civil service. What's the conclusion with your meeting with civil service, what came out of it? Are you satisfied?
It was a good meeting. We talked about some potential solutions that would allow the port to assist in screening candidates. And there were a couple of other items around that screening process that we're still debating amongst ourselves. But that, I mean, at a high level, that's really the big thing that we walked away with. There were two administrative issues that we had on the table, and we were able to resolve those issues. So, we're definitely moving forward.
Yeah, I think that what came out of it, in my eyes, was efforts to expedite the process.
That's right.
And there was good feedback to work toward that goal. Councilmember,
Do you have any reports on the repair of the ramps in Point Lash?
I do not have a report on that as of now, other than we have the RFQ ready to send out for the engineer, and that's one of the things that we're going to be doing first thing tomorrow morning, is doing the final touches to release that RFQ. And our plan is to get that engineering expertise on the ground quickly so that we can put together a plan that really looks at the big picture versus just trying to patch a problem.
Okay, good.
And, as a port, a lot of ports actually have that engineering staff that's actually on staff, and it's definitely something that we're missing, and I think bringing this resource in is going to be a tremendous help, not only for what are we going to do in the short term, but also to talk about what's the long-term, fix, for the future ramps and the future ferry.
I thank you.
yeah, and I think it's important, too, that you've taken the effort to look at a firm, and Commissioner Champagne made that very clear last time, because it can address all of our engineering needs to a point, and I think that is critical, and I appreciate that effort. Commissioner Konovich.
Back when the parish had it, they had the state engineering and designing the new ramp. Do we have that?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
When the parish owned the ferries, they had the state designing and engineering with the grants we had got from them, the new ramp that was gonna go right up the river. Do we still have that going on, or?
When you say the new ramp, are you talking the Point Lahash?
Yes, we was gonna move it right up the road on some property the parish owns.
Oh, yes, we have that information, but what we would like to do is really kind of assess the big picture. There's been discussion about one ferry at a central location. We're looking at everything right now, is it moving it per that recommendation and still keeping two, or is it better for the parish for us to put one in a midpoint and run a 24/7 service? And I think it's important for us to look at it from that perspective. One, because I think we owe it to the community to make sure that we have that ferry service up and running when they need it. Two, we need to make sure that we create a budget in the future where we're focused on maintenance and repair, preventive maintenance and preventive repair. And when you talk about doing that across two platforms, it really drives the cost up for the service. Now, that said, if we consider a single ferry, we know that we also have to consider an emergency option where if we had a water event, that we would have to be able to go in and provide some evacuation services.
One, Point Lahash is the center of the parish. Number two, not only water events, what if something happened with Venture Global? If you move it above there, how the people from down the road are supposed to get out?
Agree, and we're assessing that, and we've, identified 3 council members that we would like to bring in with us to really assess the situation, and that's Mr. Jursich, Mr. LaFrance, and Mr. Edwards, and we're working on trying to set up a meeting as early as next week so that we can start talking about what are the options, how do we do it, what are the logistics, what do we need to be concerned about, et cetera.
And Mr. Konovich, too. Yeah, we had identified,
Yes.
yeah,
Thank you.
okay.
No, I think,
Go ahead, go
I
ahead.
was just concerned about, because I'm hearing several things, repair, not repairing, just hope. At some point, we don't put more money in repair, when we're gonna do something new, why waste the money? If we're gonna build something new, let's just build something new. But let's not spend millions of dollars on a repair, when that $1 million can go in something new. So I was just wondering, at what point are we gonna do that? Are we gonna do something temporarily and then be saying we're gonna do something new? To me, it'd be better just to talk about doing something new, even if it takes much longer, wait and do something new if that's the best option, rather than putting something temporary and then coming 6 months later to talk about something new. Look how much money we have wasted. Not wasted, but
Yeah, and let me say, those discussions have been had, and it was essential, we felt, that those council members whose constituents were most impacted would be part of the decision-making process. Right now, I know Mr. Brown has been working on gathering data so he can bring something to us to make a decision. And that's all encompassing. We'd like to see what all of the options are. And the key word that has been coming out is reliability, reliability, reliability. Right now, we have the potential of a safety issue. When we talk about something new, of course, safety is paramount, but reliability is what the residents want, and it's in the forefront. You have any further comments on?
No, I think you covered it.
Okay, yeah. Commissioner Jurisich.
Yes, I think when a study was done a few years back, the central location was, I think, much further north than West Point LaHash, because if you centered it, would you center it on the east bank or would you center it on the west bank? And, if you center it on the west bank, Hobble, I think you said it was pretty much centered in Point LaHash. I mean, I just would like a clarification of, when we get into those talks, Reverend Edwards, I think it would be very instrumental for you to be part of that, process, because it's affecting, your residents over here as well. And we need to talk to our constituents as well, but we need to decipher at what point are we gonna call center? So it's something we need to start talking about if we're gonna move that way. I don't think we need to wait long, because we need, instead of repairs, I agree with Mr. Edwards, Commissioner Edwards, that we do need, if we're gonna go with something new, we need to start that ASAP.
Agree.
And those have been centers of discussion. We were very concerned during some of the initial thought process was, if you say middle of the parish, what do you really mean? And what happens from Phoenix south? If that road gets full of water, and you can say, well, we'll evacuate everybody, but what about the ones that don't evacuate? And what about the center of government, the government seat, when you can't get to the government seat? And all of those questions have come up, and they will be addressed. They will be addressed. And I know that as far as working with the state, you're on a first-name basis with them now. And we know that, yes, we have this proposed ferry ramp a few, little ways up from where it is now. And it's not gonna happen tomorrow. So there's things happening that give us a little time to kind of look at the situation as we see it and as our residents see it, and then come to some conclusions as to what we want to do. And Commissioner Konovich is absolutely right. The center of the parish is Point LaHash. That's the center, that's why it's here. At one time, the East Bank had all the population. And I know that's changed, but it hadn't changed the center of the parish. It is what it is. So those conversations are paramount, and that's why Director Tillotson recommended that we bring in those commissioners whose residents are affected the most in that process. And I thought that was a great decision on your part. Anything else? We'll move on.
Item 4, bids and advertisements. There are none. Item 5, introduction of ordinances and resolutions.
We have several. The following are for Commissioner Gooey. An ordinance to amend the Plaquemines Port Harbor and Terminal District's 2023 revenue and operating expenditure budget to reinstate the budgeted fee to complete all 4 phases of the Sustainability Partners contract and otherwise to provide with respect thereto. A resolution authorizing Charles Tillotson, Executive Director of the Plaquemines Port Harbor and Terminal District, to seek a motion to dismiss the petition for declaratory judgment, as well as the amended supplemental petition for declaratory judgment entitled Plaquemines Port Harbor and Terminal District et al. Versus Sustainability Partners LLC et al., docket number 76739, Division B, 25th Judicial District Court, Parish of Plaquemines, State of Louisiana, and otherwise to provide with respect thereto. A resolution authorizing Charles D. Tillotson, Executive Director of the Plaquemines Port Harbor and Terminal District, to enter into a professional services agreement with the Bridges Group International LLC for professional services to offer advice, guidance, and consulting services concerning the execution of a public-private partnership and otherwise to provide with respect thereto. An ordinance to appropriate funds to the Plaquemines Port Harbor and Terminal District's 2023 operating expenditure budget, line item professional services general, to onboard Rockwood Steel and otherwise to provide with respect thereto. An ordinance to amend the Plaquemines Port Harbor and Terminal District's 2023 revenue budget to add lease payments from Philway Construction LLC and otherwise to provide with respect thereto. An ordinance to amend and as amended readopt ordinance number 20-77, which established a policy of the Plaquemines Port Harbor and Terminal District relative to the solicitation and receipt of proposals for professional services for the port prior to employment and otherwise to provide with respect thereto. The next one is for Commissioner Jurisich, an ordinance to amend and as amended readopt the Plaquemines Parish Code of Ordinances, Section 2-18, rules for transaction of business before the council as the sole governing authority of the Plaquemines Port Harbor and Terminal District. Chapter 1, meetings of the Plaquemines Parish Council as the sole governing authority of the Plaquemines Port Harbor and Terminal District and otherwise to provide with respect thereto. And the following 2 are for Commissioner Schultz. A resolution approving and authorizing Dr. Stuart Gooey Jr., Port Chairman, and Charles D. Tillotson, Port Executive Director, to enter into a Louisiana Compliance Questionnaire with Chemneta and Company CPAs, and otherwise to provide with respect thereto. A resolution for the Plaquemines Parish Council acting as the sole governing authority of the Plaquemines Port Harbor and Terminal District, authorizing and directing the initiation of litigation related to the proposed Belchase Bridge project, authorizing and directing the port chairman, Stuart J. Gooey, to engage special counsel for such litigation and otherwise to provide with respect thereto. And those are all the introductions.
Thank you.
6A, ordinances and public hearings pursuant to Article 6, Section 601E of the Plaquemines Parish Charter. There are none. 6B, an ordinance to amend and as amended to readopt the Plaquemines Parish Code of Ordinances, Chapter 2, Section 218, rules governing the transaction of business before the council as the sole governing authority of the Plaquemines Parish Port Harbor and Terminal District. Rules 18A, 18B, Rule 19-1A9, and otherwise to provide with respect thereto. Commissioner Gooey.
I'll offer and ask for a second.
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Newsom. When we first took office, I'd say within the first few weeks, or maybe even before, we participated in a day-long meeting, and one of the speakers at that meeting was an attorney from the Attorney General's office, the head of the Civil Division, if I'm not mistaken. I was unable to attend that meeting, but following that meeting, I was approached both by Commissioner Champagne and Commissioner Schultz about a key point that was brought up by the attorney. And that point was directed toward the manner in which we ran our meetings and the sequence at which we ran our meetings. The open meetings law is very specific as to public comment period. Now, as everyone is aware, we never held back public comment, but the position during the agenda items that we place public comment, according to the open meetings law, should be a public comment prior to the board starting to discuss the item. Once we discuss the item, that is actually taking action. So in looking at that, I called and spoke with the lady at the Attorney General's office, and she provided me, and I forwarded it to everyone, the reasoning behind the statute in the open meetings law that says a public comment period is mandatory before action is taken by the board. So they recommended that we have a public comment period in the beginning of the meeting to encompass all of the items. And I asked, well, can't we have a public comment meeting before we take up each item on the agenda? And she said that would satisfy the law. So Kim drafted an ordinance that would change our rules, and then we passed that ordinance by Danny Garrett, Rennie Burris, and Melissa Foltz as our attorneys to make sure that the language, not only that the language of the ordinance was appropriate, but that we were in fact following the open meetings law if we passed this ordinance. So the digest that we passed last month was done so that each piece of legislation on the agenda would have an explanation as to the purpose of that legislation. I know it's growing pains, and sometimes we'll not have a digest, or we'll have to amend the digest to make it clearer, but that's starting to happen. The digest is going to show up on the website along with the agenda, the draft agenda, which comes out on a Friday. So the public then can not only go to the website and see what the agenda entails, but it also explains what each item that's up for vote is there for. And it gives the public an opportunity to contact their council member if they have questions. Additionally, the final agenda comes out on a Wednesday, and any particular changes that had to be made will be on that. But the digest and the items on the agenda to be voted upon will still be the same. The same ones that you see on Friday will be the same ones on Wednesday. We did that because the way the agenda was prior to that, the preamble may say a very simplistic explanation without any details as to the piece of legislation. And to ask the public to come and comment on a piece of legislation when the agenda doesn't say really what we're trying to take up was inappropriate. So our first step was to create the digest. Today, the proposal on the table today is to amend our laws, or our rules to say that an item that's going to be voted upon will be read, proposed, and seconded. And then the public comment period will begin. I know that's going to create some heartache, but that's the statute, the open meeting statute, that's how it's supposed to be. So if someone has something on the agenda, they had the opportunity to read about it off of our website on Friday or on Wednesday. I'm open, if this passes and we find that we need to do something more to inform the public, I'm open to doing that, absolutely, whatever it takes. But the realization that we were not following the open meetings law as written warranted us taking some action to make sure we follow that. So that is the gist of it, and it's not 25 words or less, it was a lot more, but I think it's important that that explanation took place and that now we open the floor for the council members or the commissioners to provide their comments. Commissioner Champagne.
Commissioner Gui, thank you so much for so eloquently covering that. I'll tell you that my experience has been a little bit different. I would read these, this legalese speak and have no idea what we were even bringing up at times. So I think the digest really simplified it and made me clearly understand what we were trying to do and afforded us the opportunity to reach our council member, like you said, and ask questions. And number two, and most importantly, is our job is to represent the people. And having the public comment before we make a decision allows them to inform us and to ensure that we make the right decision. Oftentimes, we'd approach these decisions before hearing from the people. It gives them an opportunity and a forum to come before us and potentially make us see things from their perspective. We represent the people, and that was my intent. I yield.
Commissioner Schultz?
So once again, I was in that training and I agree with everything you said. I do have one clarification though, which I don't know if it was brought up. After you offer and second, normally, like you just did, you explain what's going on. Is that going to happen before or after the public comment? Does the council member or commissioner who brings forth legislation explain it and then we open up to public comment? Or what's the intent? Or what's the actual result?
I agree with you that, and I don't think we wrote it that way, Kim, but.
It just popped in my brain when you were talking. I'm like, wait,
Yeah.
hold on.
Right,
So
right,
I didn't
right,
think of
right.
it either until
Yeah.
just now.
Very good, yeah. I was, my thought process was we make the opportunity for the public to read the digest. But if this passes, we can amend it if we need to, Kim and attorneys, to even clarify that even further, where the proposer can physically read the digest and further explain if necessary. Mr. Garrett?
Yeah, and I think that you kind of have two options. You could have the member who's making the offer give a brief explanation just on their own and then open it for public comment. Or you could just formally read the digest in. I think either one would suffice. I would say that one of the things, and it's the chairman's job, and sometimes it's the hardest part, is everybody wants to hurry up and talk about it. And that's the thing that you have to hold off on, is to make sure you do it in this order and do it in this order every time. Because I think you will find that if you do it in this order every time, the public will learn that that's how it's done and no one will feel cheated or offended. And you'll find that they all move more smoothly. What can happen at times is people want to hurry up and talk about it and they start pressing their button. And then you have council talking and the public talking and the council talking and the public talking. And because it lacks that structure, you sometimes spend 40 minutes talking about something that passes 9-0. But I think you could do either way. I think the way you have it written, you're essentially relying on the public. If they've got a copy of the agenda, they have a copy of the digest. So essentially, they've got the digest right there to read. Now, certainly people at home don't, I mean, unless they're looking at the agenda online. So I think you could do it either way. If you wanted to have an opportunity for the member who offers it to give a brief explanation, I think you would probably want to change, to amend it slightly to do that, so that there's no question that you're not following your own ordinance.
Is the member that explains it, is that technically an action?
Now,
So would we have to, because we're not taking any action by the member just explaining it, they're explaining it, and then that's it, then the public is the action. And-
correct. And then you would have
Okay.
public comment. And again, I would caution that one of the things that the other 8 members will have to do is, if a question pops in their head, jot it down. Y'all will have the opportunity. Y'all ultimately will have the final say. Let the person say what they think the ordinance does, then let the public come, provide that input. Because what happens often is maybe you've already done your homework, you're ready to talk about it right now. Well, I want to clarify what he said it really does something else. Well, as soon as you do that, you're kind of off your rule. So like I said, one option is just leave it the way it is and just rely on the public that the digest has already been provided to them. And that has a summary of what the purpose
So
of
that tells us
the measure is.
Talk about the digest. Okay. Thank you, Danny. Ms. Toops was showing me some of the language that's there that, in essence, does that, correct?
Right. I mean, it's not specifically listed, like first we're gonna offer it, then we're gonna second it. But that leads y'all to do it in any way, manner that y'all want to. So,
It's open to.
It's open.
It's open, but the digest,
are now contained on the agenda
yeah,
and up there on the slide, so, yeah.
right, it is on the slide. So let's get through the discussion, and maybe we can decide if we want to tweak it a little bit, or go ahead and vote on it if we don't have to tweak it.
I was really excited when I was at the meeting and the young lady brought this up. And I was saying why it took so long to get here, because for 42 years of being on that side of death, and I was like you, Mr. Champagne, like, I don't even know, and you know it, Dr. I say, what are y'all talking about? I don't even understand what this ordinance is about. So I just think this is really, really, really great for someone who's been on that side for many years, hoping this was really here. I don't know why it took us waiting all these years to get this young lady to tell us this, but I think this is really great. And anyone who's coming who want to participate, I think this is a good foundation for open government.
Thank you. And I think after looking at the language you just showed me, that we would be more than appropriate to pass this today and put it in exercise, and then tweak it if we need to tweak it. But the principle behind it is solid. Commissioner Newsom.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Agree with all the councilmen. Dr. Gouy, thank you for bringing this forward, and I was at the same meeting. It was an onboarding process for me, being a new council member and port commissioner, so it's very, as well as Reverend Harris put it, we put the information out there for the public, and they can make their comments, and I encourage it. I used to say the same when I was campaigning. The good Lord has given us 2 ears and 1 mouth, so that means we should listen more than we talk. So I encourage public comment, listening. We have very smart, knowledgeable people in this parish, come up with a lot of good ideas, and as government, it's about working together and working in partnership. And if this body, I have a strong feeling that we want to work with the public and be a partner with everyone. So with that, I yield. Thank you.
Anyone else at the table? Anything? Being that the rules haven't changed yet, I'll ask for public comment.
Mr. Chairman, Donald Valet, members. When I first saw this come up, I somewhat questioned it a little bit, the intention. Having served in many state boards, every year we got a new board group come in, we went through the same indoctrination and training you all just went through with the Secretary of State and with the Ethics Commission as well. I don't know if y'all have gone through the Ethics Commission yet on it. I did speak to Ms. Suter yesterday, Lauren, in some detail. Probably spent about a half hour with this, Danny, and some of what we talked about. My only thing is that what she recommended to you all was the minimum of requirements that you had to comply with, and that particularly with the word, I use the word carefully because we've had this discussion many times, action. Your discussions create an action. Well, we may disagree with that because, in my opinion, an action is when you get ready to go vote. But that's not what the law says with them, okay? And that's where all this is different. That's why she recommended to you all to allow the public comment before your comments even on this thing. And I don't disagree with that. That's not a problem, in my opinion. However, what she recommended to you all was the minimum. And what I spoke to Mr. Schultz about yesterday was that you went further and added in that there's no dialogue, question and answer period. It doesn't say you can't have that. That's something you all decided upon. And I think that goes against what you all have suggested in all your public comments when you all ran for office, was transparency. That doesn't mean you can't do it. And I can tell you, I've been chairman of different boards. It really, Mr. Gouy, I commend you what you've been doing by putting all the information out so the public can know that you're being voted on. That was a plus, what you all did. However, to just arbitrarily say there's not going to be any discussion or questions about any of the items that come up on the agenda, I think it's for a good chairman, and I'm not saying you're not, Stuart, because I've known you too well for a long time, controls that meeting to what it is adhered to, what is being discussed, and how long that discussion goes on. And prudent. But you need to listen to the public. Some of the words in that article, that revised statute, it came out that you read, Dan, and you may have a copy of it. The intent of the public comment is to aid you all with sufficient information for you all to make a decision on. And sometimes you need to go further than just have a public comment from somebody. And they probably need to listen to some of the things you say and where you're going from it. Like you said a minute ago, Ronnie, there's a lot of good people, a lot of smart people in this parish. And the discussions I've had with many of you all, I haven't met all of you all yet, literally, you can use the advice of a lot of these people that live in this parish and their personal experiences. And I would hope that you keep an open mind, and whatever you all are going to pass today is that you still will have discussions with the people that offer public comment. Any questions, Danny? Am I wrong in what I'm saying about what the revised statute is?
The revised statute actually doesn't reference anything. It's actually much shorter. It only says that they shall provide a period for public comment at any point in the meeting prior to action on an agenda item. That's the.
But it does discuss about the purposes to aid and assist council members.
Actually, it doesn't reference purpose of the public comment period. The only purpose language is in the general open meetings law. It's a general purpose.
It doesn't prohibit discussions, though. It doesn't prohibit. No. Okay.
Thank you, appreciate it, yeah.
I'm hearing what you're saying, but I don't think that we're differences. Have a difference in what you're saying. I think that this very ordinance is to address what you're saying because it wasn't happening before. So it's allowing people to have discussion. So I think you're saying the same thing we're saying. I mean, I haven't heard you say anything that different from what the intent of this ordinance is.
Reverend, I didn't hear the first part of y'all's meeting. Foster and I were caught on the ferry. We were late coming in, so maybe you all have discussed something different than what was being offered now.
I think the very thing that you just got finished saying is the intent of this ordinance. You know, where citizens can get up, they understand what the ordinance is before they can, and they can discuss it.
I don't think anything you're doing is trying to attempt to restrict public comment and public participation. As long as, that's your goals, I don't see any problem with it. But I just want to make sure that at least the public's going to be able to discuss with you all what goes on. Is that the same thing you see, Mr.
That's the
Schultz?
same thing that we saying, and I tell you,
Okay,
you
I
know,
don't need
me, I was excited about that because all the many years that I stood where you at, that was my concern. You know, I didn't know what this ordinance was about. How can I discuss something? And we had to wait till I hear what the commissioner said or the council member said. So I think the intent of this, and I think that's what my colleague saying, is allow the public input where they can discuss the digest and let them know what that issue is, so there won't be any confusion about that.
Okay. I don't have anything else. If anybody wants to ask me a question.
Commissioner LaFrance.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Garrett, what is the definition of taking action? Is taking action voting, or is taking action discussion?
And again, the statute, actually, here, let me get to it real quick.
While you're doing that, I had that argument with her, I guess you call it an argument, as to what is taking action. She said, as soon as you open the floor to the council to start discussing the parameters of the legislation or your opinions on the legislation, you are taking action. And I found that to be, maybe because I'm old school and I know that's the way it's been done, it was kind of problematic to me. And she said, this is the way the statute reads. And when it says take action, it's action to say this body is going to start debating or interacting. One of the points that Mr. Valley brought up, and I felt this was something at the discretion of the chair, is that the digest and all of the website postings and the agenda that's sitting out there, it's no guarantee that someone in the public who is being impacted is going to understand the true impact of what's going on. And as a chair, I realize that. And if I see that something needs to be done as far as opening up to answer something, of course, I'm open to that. Meaning, and I can be shut down by a motion. Anyone here can shut me down or Carlton down or whoever the chair is and say, I have a motion that we close any further comment and then we can vote on it. That's if it gets out of hand. I'm sure someone would want to do that. But me personally, I think there's latitude as a chair that if we get into an issue that's a real issue, it's a difficult issue to understand, that the chair has the prerogative to try to help clarify that for a member of the public. That being said, I still believe in this process that we post as many places as we can what the intent of the legislation is. And if someone is really interested, they're going to look at that and maybe call one of us to try to get clarification. And if they don't, that they have a public comment period to come up and state their concerns.
Mr. Chairman, when I was chairman, you tracked it.
Hold it.
Yeah, I know. I was addressing you, Carlton, yeah.
So what is the difference? Okay,
And again, I can tell you now, there's no AG opinion or case that specifically answers that question. The statute says, prior to taking action on an agenda item upon which a vote is to be taken. I have always interpreted that to mean that the public comment has to take place prior to you voting. Because you take action through your vote. That's how a body takes action through its vote. Attorney General's office may view it a bit more. There's not been an opinion on that yet. I will tell you, the general public policy of the open meetings law is to be construed liberally. Not liberally as in politics, but liberally as in expansive. So if the Attorney General was of the opinion that debate was action, given that the Attorney General's opinions have more weight than mine, for sure, not as much as a court's, but that would be, it would be beneficial to do that. I just think as a matter of order, it makes more sense to have public comment before y'all begin debate, because public comment is actually going to inform your debate. And I think that was kind of the point they were trying to make. I will say this, and this issue actually came up at a port meeting, I think at one point, and that someone made, called the question, and there was an effort to actually prevent the last 2 or 3 people from making public comment. My opinion I issued at that time was that you couldn't do that. I don't believe that you can terminate public comment through a calling the question. Call the question actually stops y'all's debate. That's a parliamentary procedure. Now, you certainly can set reasonable rules. And I can tell you at the legislature, they have very similar to this. If they have 70 people that show up in a committee room, I can almost guarantee you the committee's going to put a 2-minute rule on all public comment, simply so they can get through them. And you can, I know of a number of public bodies where if there are a whole bunch of people in the room, they'll ask if it's sides, could they appoint a representative and give each representative 15 or 20 minutes rather than have 50 people come up and spend 5 minutes saying the exact same thing, just so you can get on to the public's business. But, so like I said, I think what you're proposing, I think is a much more measured and structured way to operate the meetings. I think it is going to facilitate the public having input, while at the same time, I think, keeping the order. So that then once you've received that public input, then y'all debate, then you move forward. And whether the debate is action or the actual vote is action, it still will have taken place after public comment.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman, I can answer, I was going to answer your question.
well,
Okay.
go ahead.
All right.
I lost that same discussion with Ms. Lauren as far as what constituted an action. And she said, just what Danny said, there's no statute that's on the books as of now. Normally, in the past where I've been chair, it's the action that constitutes the vote. But that's not what the state attorney has offered to you all on this. So I asked her if she would get me something in writing to that. And then I backed up and said, no, you don't need to, because it's not my concern on that. That is you all, as the council. If you all want to live by what you're proposing now, that's just another way of doing it.
Okay. So,
Go ahead.
go ahead.
And just one more, and again, I've been doing this a while. The public comment period law that applies to y'all actually is more recently adopted. Before it applied to everyone else, the next section of the meetings law actually applied only to school boards. It's written slightly different. It actually, and so, because again, the thought was let the public speak before you take action. It was actually written that the public comment on at any meeting of the school board prior to taking any vote. And I think when the legislature came back and then added that similar requirement to all the other public bodies in the state, which I actually drafted that bill for then Representative Bruno, the thought was that we were trying to essentially impose on everybody what school boards already had applied to them. So that's why I've interpreted that the action was to vote, because as in my experience, a public body doesn't do anything without voting. That's how they take action. But again, I think right now we're sort of trying to figure out how many angels on the head of a pin, because I think the Attorney General has indicated there's no case law on it. It certainly errs on the side of caution to have the public comment prior to your debate.
Okay, so once we get a motion, then you get a second. Then you open it up for public comments. And after you finish the public comment, then the board discuss it. And then after the board discuss it, administration, then we go for the vote. But after we discuss it, after the council discuss it, if there's if someone in the public want to come back up and make a comment, do we allow that?
There's no prohibition in the law, but it's not required by the law.
Not the same person. It don't have to be the same person. Suppose there's a different person who didn't come up previously, after we discuss it, that will want to make a comment. Do we allow that?
Again, under y'all's policy, no, the open meetings law would not require it. And I can tell you in most of the jurisdictions that I've worked with, that's not been the process. That once the public comment period was over, then the elected members of the board then debate and vote.
So once the public comment period is over, it is over.
Yes.
We do not allow them to come back up, even though after the council discussed things and it might have brought up some new ideas or new situations, we still don't allow them to come up for public comment because that period has ended.
Right, and again, you could always say, someone can make a motion to say, look, I'd like to suspend our rule and allow a second round of public comment. You
But
could,
that would have to go to a vote.
correct.
As I understand it, the chair can,
I yield, Mr. Chairman.
I'm gonna sit down.
Commissioner Schultz.
So, going back to, I guess, your question, Mr. LaFrance, I'm reading Lauren's email, and the operative term, prior to any action on item, it is the advice of this office that the board discussion and any resulting motions count as an action on the item. So that's why, I guess, we're bringing it forward prior to our discussion. Later, she actually says, is not that the debate amongst the council shouldn't influence the public, but instead that the public's comments should inform and direct the board's discussion. The public comments, the board discusses, and then you vote. This structure also prevents going back and forth between board comments and public comments. So I think that based on her email, that's the advice of the office, and that's why we're trying to implement this to be better government following the AG's opinion, or AG's guidance, because there is no opinion, like Mr. Garrett said. So it's kind of we're following guidance from the office without AG opinion.
Well, the public definitely gonna let you know.
Oh, I know, and I think that's why, and I agree with Mr. Gooey that the digest, putting it on the website, that gives 2 weeks, basically, that the public should hopefully contact us if there's any issues. That way we know prior to. Does that always happen? No, but then hopefully they come up before and guides our discussion. I mean, it's one of those things that I was in that meeting and I was caught completely off guard when she said that. I thought, because I've been coming to the meetings for the past couple of years and I thought we were following the law and everything, and I was kind of caught off guard. I even questioned, I'm like, wait, this is how we do it now. And she's like, y'all need to reverse it. And that's why we brought it to Councilmember Gooey's attention, since he was the chairman of the port, and said, you might want to look into this.
Mr. Chairman, can I clarify something?
Please.
It won't be 2 weeks. It's the Friday before the meeting, so it's just a few days. But still.
The introductions sent out normally, I thought, on Tuesday, well, I guess a week and a half.
Yeah, I was thinking about the draft agenda.
Yeah, but the introductions from the
Introductions
previous
also.
meeting will be, sent,
Right,
yeah.
by the Tuesday.
And that's I guess, they'll get the introduction, so a week and a half, so. But, and that's the intent, is they see the introductions, call us, and then the draft agenda
Right.
goes on the website another week or 6 days, so
Right. Okay.
I yield.
Commissioner Edwards.
No, I'm good. I'm sorry.
Commissioner Jersich.
Yes, I think we just saw a prime example of what we're trying to avoid is debate. Once you get public comment in all of my meetings that I hold with the Oyster Task Force and state legislature and everything, you do have a public comment period. And we take those public comments in advisement. And, you always have your council member you can reach out to if you have any questions prior to, so you can answer those questions. But your public comment period is so y'all can give the comment, and we don't get into a debate just as we just had. And I know we're just getting started with this, and we appreciate, the understanding, but this is the reason, so we can move forward and get these meetings, done in a timely manner, but use y'all comment as a basis on our vote. Thank you. I yield.
Commissioner Newsom.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Being new on the council, I want to just, we encourage more public to come. Some of the same folks we see out here every day. I want to thank you guys and gals for coming, because it's really important that the public is informed and they know. So again, I know, Mr. Valley, you've probably come to more meetings than most of the councilmen up here have attended. So thank you for that. And I don't know if you come in your truck, pick up some people on the road and bring them with you. Put them in your truck and bring them with you. So, again, this body wants to hear from the public. We really do. It's important. But as most of us have seen in the past, I hate to bring up the past, but it's gotten to a question and answer, a public debate, and this is not the forum for that to take place. So by putting this in place, we're trying to get away from this, as Councilman Church has just said, it's important. But again, it is not any way to suppress the public's comment. Again, it's very important that we hear the public's comment and we encourage them to come and voice their opinion. And, you know, we talk about, Mr. Garrett talked about when he had I don't think we've had too many problems when we had the meeting overloaded with people where we had to put some, you know, things. Everybody gets, I think, a time of 5 minutes. Yeah, you know, I think the max. And so 5 minutes is a long time to talk, even for me, which I like to talk a lot. So, but again, thank you. Thank the public for coming, and the fellas guys and gals that do come and speak out, because it's very, very, very informative. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and you.
Anyone at the table? Cue in. Comment on the floor? Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Rondell Battle. I like all you guys' attitude, what I'm hearing today. But Mr. Chairman, I didn't like that. I caught some false information when you said the East Bank was once more populated than the West Bank.
Excuse me, sir.
That's what I caught.
That was,
Anybody else heard that?
no, wait, no. I'm gonna,
You said once more populated on the East.
I'm gonna
Bank.
comment.
The middle of the parish is Point Lahad. That's why the ferry went here. I'm not here. I
We're
let you
on-
guys talk. I just want to see what I have to say.
Okay.
That's it.
Okay.
So y'all
Listen,
raise
do you
that-
have any comments on what's on the table, the legislation we're
Only thing I'm
discussing?
here- Only thing I'm here for is the ferry.
Okay, well, we're not discussing the ferry, but I tell you what,
This is a councilman meeting or a port meeting?
this is a port meeting. We,
Why can I be heard? All I'm asking for is just to state my comment.
I'll give you a minute.
A minute? He had 5. All I need is 1.
You want any minutes at all?
1 minute.
I'll give you a minute.
Sir, I know you come from Houston. Last time we met off on the back. It's not anger. It's frustration. It's hurt. Because we've been divided forever. All right? We have people from Rouville don't have no reason to come here. All we have is a jail and a courthouse. They have no reason to come here. Okay? The public knew it was the $25 million. One ferry is all we need for 24 hours. Safety. Nothing else but safety. You know, people go around town, gotta deal with these thugs, gotta deal with the police, you gotta deal with these coyotes and wild pigs and all this. So all we're doing is we want this for safety. And you say you don't have the manpower, so you got the manpower from one that has belted employees, you put that together. That's the best solution, man, for safety, you know? And I don't know how many seconds I have left, you know? But I just want, just a few concerns I want you to hear. You know, if that ferry, number one, safety, but if that ferry go anywhere like White Ditch or Joey Bank, wherever y'all could purchase some property, it could generate business to our side, you know? With the pleasure of that besides just having the courthouse and the jailhouse. You on the same page? You know, you can put right there where the ferry landed, you can put a brand new.
Mr. Battle,
Mr.
Mr. Battle.
Brand new shop right there.
Mr. Battle, I appreciate your passion. I really do. I understand.
You do.
I do. And we've been through this. Any more discussion on this item? Machine is open. And the ordinance is approved unanimously, 9-0. Next item?
Item 7, new business. 7A, introduction of resolutions wherein suspension is being sought. There are none. 8, approval of the February 9th, 2023 regular meeting minutes.
So often.
Offered and seconded. Over here. LaFrance and Konovich. I had to take this hearing aid out. It was ringing. I'm sorry, I did. It happens, believe me.
I might need it for a little while. Give it to
That machine is open. And the minutes are approved unanimously. Motion to adjourn? Motion by Mr. Konovich and seconded by Ms. McCarty. Machine is open. And the meeting is adjourned 9-0 at 4:01 PM.